The sky was the color of cremated bone when Joss and Vinka trudged across the cracked flats of what had once been coastal marshland. They walked with fingers interlaced behind their heads, one eye on the dust devils spiraling in the distance, and the other on the ground for protruding rebar that could skewer a boot. The pair, bonded less by affection than the arithmetic of survival, had spent the last month scavenging for copper coils and intact servo motors to trade with the caravan guilds. The guilds, in turn, supplied water filters and antibiotic tabs, the only currencies that mattered in the reft, the 1,000-mile scar that a vanished ocean had left behind. This morning's haul fit inside a single burlap satchel. 2 wrist-thick cables stripped of insulation, a half jar of ball bearings, and a cracked titanium spanner constituted their grand reward for picking an entire scrapyard clean. The miserable bounty was not what gnawed at Joss, however. What gnawed was the silence. Even out here, fox wasps usually darted between scrub, and lichen parrots sometimes flitted overhead, shattering like broken modems. Today, there was nothing but the hiss of wind knitting through fissures in the earth. Silence meant something had changed, and in the reft, change seldom tilted toward benevolence. Vinka halted, sliding down her respirator to sip from their shared canteen. "Look," she murmured, pointing toward a distant ridge that ridged the plain like a saurian spine. A sliver of black glass jutted from its crest, reflecting the pallid sky. Shards of obsidian architecture were not uncommon. Ancient cities had shattered themselves in the age of boiling, but none had been mapped this far east. Curiosity was risky. So was heading home empty-handed. They voted by habit. Palm up for go, down for stay. 2 palms up. Decision made, they angled toward the ridge, boots crunching desiccated salt. As they climbed, more glass emerged, revealing what appeared to be a partially collapsed dome. The ribs of some forgotten pavilion encircled a crater where seawater had once lapped. Joss's adrenaline quickened. Domes meant vaults, and vaults occasionally meant pre-collapse tech, still cocooned from corrosion. Inside, light streamed through triangled panes, illuminating a floor of tessellated basalt tiles. The chamber's air was cooler than the scorched flats outside, hinting that geothermal vents still breathed below. Crates lay scattered like kicked ant hills, their security seals long ago cut by prior raiders. Yet, to their astonishment, a central column of machinery remained untouched beneath a shroud of tarpaulin. Vinka peeled back a corner. Dust puffed, but the fabric disintegrated with a velvet sigh, revealing brushed steel unblemished by rust. An emblem gleamed, in situ Biosculpt 9000. Neither scavenger recognized the brand, yet the numeral alone suggested staggering capacity. Embedded in the column was a blunt, coffin-sized cavity with rails, as if designed to house a printing cartridge large enough to cradle a person. Data ports ringed the cavity like jewelry. Joss pressed the power pad on reflex, half expecting sparks. Instead, a dull hum built, stabilizing into the smooth purr of gyros, waking from a century's sleep. Hololamps blinked sapphire. A lattice of status icons danced across a dusty projection field, resolving into an interface so archaic that its fonts bordered on calligraphy. "Welcome, authorized user." The printer chimed in, a voice as gentle as moonlight. "Bioregenerative array at 97%. Please insert ecosystem blueprint." Vinka stared, chewing her bottom lip. "Ecosystem? As in, like, plants?" "Plants," Joss echoed softly. "And everything that eats them, drinks them, lives beneath them. This thing's no fabber for spare parts. It's a Genesis engine." The stories his grandmother used to whisper, about vaults where pre-collapse scientists preserved the genetic libraries of entire biomes. suddenly felt less like bedtime myths. He slid a gloved finger across the holographic menu. Options cascaded. Temperate rainforest, mangrove estuary, coral atoll, midwestern prairie, highland cloud forest. Each entry pulsed green, signifying available. Each bore a sub-label reading blueprint status, intact. Vinka exhaled a tremulous laugh. We bring that cartridge to market. We'll own the guilds. Hell, we'll own the chiefs who own the guilds. No one can haul a printer this size, Joss said. But maybe we don't need to. His pulse raced with an entirely different calculus, one that had nothing to do with barter. 5 generations had lived amid dust and plastic dunes, believing real forests were fairy tales concocted to console children. What if they didn't have to be? He selected mangrove estuary. The projector rendered a 3D schematic, twisting roots gripping brackish water, shoals of silver fish flickering beneath emerald canopies. Joss felt a heaviness settle behind his eyes. He wasn't sure whether it was awe or grief for everything humanity had murdered. Insert biosubstrate, the printer prompted. Under a panel at their feet, they found sealed drums labeled organic feedstock, dry. Each barrel held a coarse gray powder, smelling faintly of cedar and ozone, the dehydrated building blocks of life, ground to molecular paste, waiting for water and code. We have water enough for a demo, Vinka said, shaking their canteen. But if we're resurrecting mangroves, we'd need a whole river. Joss bit his thumbnail. Maybe we start with something small, a single plant, proof of concept. He toggled through the menu until discovering microclimat, wild germination pod. The menu indicated pod templates required only 1 liter of water, 30 minutes of print time, and a seed key, some encrypted genetic cipher the system would embed before extrusion. They loaded a drum of feedstock, poured what little water remained, and initialized the sequence. Motors whirred. A transparent enclosure descended over the print bay, and a smell like fresh rain filled the dome. They watched, speechless, as filaments of viscous matter spooled from tungsten nozzles, weaving a latticed shell the size of a melon. Within the shell, green veins appeared, capillaries spiraling into what slowly became recognizable as a sprout suspended in a nutrient gel. The printer's voice chimed. Germination pod ready. Deploy within 12 hours for optimal habitat establishment. Vinka cradled the pod as though it were a breathing infant. Tiny leaves, brighter than anything the wasteland offered, trembled inside, already leaning toward light. Joss felt a sensation he hadn't named since childhood. Hope, raw and terrifying. He pictured planting pods across the flats, letting them unfold into thickets and swamps, summoning clouds, coaxing rain, mending the broken water cycle. But dreams were brittle in the reft. Guilds fought over less significant discoveries, and warlords would burn seedlings for sport if it gained them leverage. If the printer's existence became common knowledge, armies would storm this dome by week's end. Vinka seemed to read his thoughts. We can't guard this place alone. Not with only knives and a half-dead railgun. Then we silence it, Joss said, surprising himself. Hide the interface, bury the entrance. We come back later with allies we trust. Trust? She barked a laugh. I trust you, mostly because I know where you sleep. That's about it. Footsteps echoed above, crunching shattered glass. Instinctively, they doused hololamps and ducked behind crates. 2 silhouettes moved across the dome's periphery, lean, armed, their outlines etched by the waning day. Scavengers like them, or worse, bound mercs of the dust court, known to collect bounties in severed heads. Joss fingered the grip of his railgun, praying its capacitor still held a charge. Vinka set the germination pod gently behind a steel drum, then drew her bone-handled machete. The newcomers paused near the printer, muttering. One produced a lantern that bled amber light. "Vault tech untouched," he said, voice crackling like crushed foil. "Could fetch a king's ransom." "We mark the site," his partner replied, "then return with a crawler to haul it." "A crawler won't fit through the pass. We'd need skiffs." "Skiffs cost rations." Their argument drifted toward logistics and profit margins. Joss and Vinka traded glances, concluding simultaneously that neither mercenary had cracked the machine's purpose. But ignorance would not protect them once reinforcements arrived. Something had to be done now. Joss risked a half-step forward, leveling the railgun. Capacitors whined, faint yet lethal. As he steadied the barrel, the printer, ever solicitous, decided to speak. "Error. Germination pod remains in vicinity above optimal temperature threshold. Recommend immediate relocation." The mercenaries froze. One swung his lantern toward the sound, exposing the hollow interface still faintly glowing, an incriminating beacon. "Who's there?" Vinka cursed under her breath. No point in stealth now. She hurled herself from cover, machete glinting. Joss fired. An arc of ionized air cracked the silence, scoring a neon line across the dome. The shot missed high, but drew the mercenaries' attention away from Vinka, who closed the distance with brutal speed. She slashed at the lantern bearer, catching his forearm. He screamed, lantern tumbling, glass exploding in sparks. Darkness engulfed them, except for the printer's cold azure glow. The second mercenary recovered faster, drawing a flechette pistol. He squeezed off a burst that gnashed basalt tiles near Joss's feet. Joss ducked, heart pounding in his ears, then squeezed the railgun's trigger again. This time the shot found the pistol, vaporizing half of it and searing flesh. The man howled, dropping the molten stump. Vinka finished the first assailant with 2 decisive blows. Kneeling, she wrenched a sidearm from his belt and tossed it to Joss. The remaining mercenary clutched his ruined hand, stumbling backward. "Take your loot," Joss shouted, voice echoing. "And forget this place." The man nodded frantic consent, then fled into the night, dragging his wounded companion's corpse like luggage. Silence returned, stained by metallic stench. Vinka leaned against a crate, breathing in jagged heaves. "That won't stop them," she said. "He'll bring back a legion." She retrieved the germination pod, which pulsed a gentle bioluminescent green, oblivious to bloodshed. Joss wiped sweat from his brow. "We can't stay, but neither can we leave the printer for scavengers. If they salvage parts or scrap the system, that knowledge is lost." He gazed at the interface, mind racing. "There's another option." He swiped through menus until locating Program, Autonomous Deployment. According to the file, the printer could generate mobile seed dispersal drones, each armed with micro-printers of their own, capable of terraforming on the move. A fail-safe existed. If the base dome were compromised, the system could self-evacuate its genetic library into the drones, which would scatter like spores across the continent. "But that means surrendering control," Vinka cautioned. "Control is fatal in these lands," Joss replied. "Everything people try to own, they ruin. Maybe we let the trees decide." He initiated the failsafe. The printer's tone deepened, as if understanding the gravity. "Autonomous ARC protocol engaged. Estimated completion, 14 minutes. Warning. Core components will be irretrievable." Panels retracted, revealing 6 skeletal drones nested within the floor, a brood of chrome cicadas, mechanical limbs unfurled, nozzles preheated, misting the chamber with disinfectant that smelled like thyme. They needed to guard those 14 minutes. They dragged crates against the main doorway, blocking line of sight from the ridge. Through gaps in the wall, Joss saw campfires flicker far across the flats, scavenger enclaves waking to dusk. News of gunfire might rouse curiosity. The drones awoke one by one, optical sensors blinking. The printer extruded vials, concentrated genetic codes compressed into amber capsules, which the drones slotted into internal vaults. They armed themselves with feedstock pellets like bees packing pollen. 10 minutes gone. A rumble vibrated the dome. Far off, engines roared. Surface bikes chewing salt. The wounded mercenary was living up to his promise. Headlights speared the dark, weaving toward the ridge. "Time?" Vinka asked, adjusting her respirator. 3 minutes. They positioned themselves behind basalt pillars, weapons ready but hearts resigned. A childhood prayer surfaced in Joss's memory, something about guardians of green valleys, and he murmured it without meaning to. The first bike crested the ridge, riders silhouetted. A dozen more followed, their growls a pack of hunting canids. As they descended, Joss heard shouted orders. "Alive if possible. The tech is priority." Within the dome, the printer announced, "Autonomous arc protocol complete. Initiating dispersal." Wind burst outward as the skylight irised open. One by one, the drones launched, thrusters igniting with ghost blue fire. They streaked into the night, scattering in divergent trajectories, north toward the glacial remains, east toward dead volcanoes, south toward poisoned deltas. Starlight glinted off their wings before they vanished into cloudless dark. The bikers reached the barricade and opened fire, bullets chewing through crates. Splinters ricocheted. Joss and Vinka returned fire sparingly, conserving ammo. Their goal was delay, not victory. The printer, its prime directive fulfilled, powered down. Hololamps dimmed. In the hush that followed, Joss felt an ache inside his ribcage, as if something had been born there and flown away. Fuel tanks howled outside. Bikers brought cutting torches. Orange arcs sprayed the barricade. Soon they'd flood the dome, angered to discover the machine inert. Its secrets departed. Joss realized that what remained of the biosculpt 9000 house was now little more than a metal husk. Valuable scrap, yes, but worthless compared to what had escaped. Vinka nudged him. "We run?" "We run." They slung their dwindling ammo, pocketed 2 feedstock capsules the printer had ejected, but not loaded, a final gift, and sprinted toward a maintenance tunnel the drones had unsealed during launch. The passage spiraled downward into bedrock, emerging half a mile beyond the ridge in a tangle of broken culverts. By the time they surfaced, the night sky was alive. Comets of neon green arced across the firmament. Beacons emitted by the drones as they deployed their micro-printers mid-flight, seeding the upper winds with aerosolized mycorrhizal spores. It looked like a meteor shower performing in reverse. Stars being born, not dying. Joss leaned against a culvert, chest burning, and watched dendritic patterns unfurl inside the parabola of heaven. He imagined somewhere, perhaps 100 miles east, a drone descending into cracked mudflats, printing freshwater reeds that would tease frogs from dormancy. He imagined clouds condensing where none had brewed in decades. Vinka unscrewed their canteen, offering him the last swallow. "We may have started something we can't finish." "We don't have to finish it," he said, feeling the weight of that revelation settling like loam. "We only had to start it." He produced one of the printer's leftover capsules, holding it to the starlight. Inside swirled a helix of genetic code labeled Atlantic White Cedar, extinct since the acid rains, according to lore. Vinka smiled a tired, lopsided smile. Guess we'll need to find water after all. Water will find us, Joss replied, surprising himself again with optimism. Give the cedars time. Dawn bled mauve along the horizon, and with it came an unfamiliar scent, petrichor, the aroma of earth anticipating rain. Joss thought perhaps it was a trick of wind, passing over chemical ponds, but the fragrance deepened, rich with promise. He closed his eyes, inhaling. Behind them, faint yet distinct, rose the thunder of enraged scavengers discovering disappointment. Shots rang, futile echoes against the gutted dome. Let them rage, he thought. The world's true treasure was already airborne, beyond the clutch of fists or gunmetal. It was rewriting the sky, one blueprint at a time. Joss and Vinka started walking south, toward a rumor of riverbeds that still bled thin silver veins beneath cracked salt. The cedars nestled in Vinka's pocket, the second capsule tucked against Joss's heart. Above them, the newborn constellations of drone beacons drifted, dimming as the sun climbed. By noon, those beacons would fade, then vanish, and perhaps no one would remember seeing them. Yet somewhere, in hidden vales and eroded gorges, printers would already be assembling roots and feathers, scales and petals, beaks and chlorophyll. The blueprint of Earth, once shredded by greed and fire, was knitting itself together inside 1,000,000 microscopic workshops. Joss imagined children, real children, not hardened orphans sharpened by scarcity, wandering through groves of white cedar, their laughter echoing among trunks older than memory. He imagined schools teaching not only how to barter and shoot, but how to listen to frogs, how to chart the migration of bright birds no one had words for yet. Hope, he realized, was not a fragile thing after all. It was a seed designed to endure dormancy, waiting for the right conditions to explode into riotous green. The wasteland had mistaken dormancy for death. Now it would learn the difference. Vinka reached over, squeezing his hand. They walked until the wind shifted, carrying with it the first cold kiss of genuine moisture. High overhead, clouds were gathering, bruised and pregnant. Joss grinned into the rising breeze, tasting electricity at the edge of his tongue. Rain was coming. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon enough. The reft would not remain a scar forever. And when the first drops finally struck parched soil, they would carry within them the memory of a printer's hum, the courage of 2 scavengers, and the codified dreams of a planet building itself anew.